In 2017, we had the ruling that results declared at the polling stations were final. And this follows the Maina Kiai case and the High Court ruling to that effect. Explain to me why there seems to be a never-ending uncertainty that follows our electoral cycle. Look, we spend more than 40 billion Kenya shillings, one of the most expensive elections per voter. That's about 1,200 shillings. That's about $12. The least in the region is Rwanda, which is about 100 Kenya shillings, about $1. Highest, maybe Tanzania, they're about $5, 500 Kenya shillings. I mean, despite this huge public spending and the taxpayer funding one of the most expensive elections, why the never-ending uncertainties that accompany our electoral outcomes?
Well, firstly, good morning, Ayub, and good morning, viewers, and also my panelists. As I got the invitation yesterday, I wondered whether I was joining I guess, a blood sport that emerged in Rome in the first BC, which was the gladiator sport. And I see you've put me between the two good senators, so hopefully I will be able to restrain them should it get too vibrant. At Amnesty International, we had no candidates bar the Constitution in the elections last year. So it's important just to indicate that as Amnesty International, we are completely non-partisan in terms of these processes. We also don't have an observatory on the elections. So my comments are somewhat limited in terms of the, I guess, the free and fairness of the election. Yeah. From our mandate, we essentially focus on two things, and they're all wrapped within the Article 81, which is essentially that elections should be non-violent, that they should not suppress any voter, that all people who are eligible should have the opportunity to vote, and it should be free of corruption. And I think, coming back to your specific comment, first of all, just in terms of Saitabayo's book, this, of course, will be a bestseller, I suspect. Whether you like it or not, you're going to have to read it in order to have a conversation about the last elections. And I guess part of why it will be a bestseller is because of the question you've asked, which is essentially, why do we have a perennial conversation about elections? Was it now 9 months after the elections? And I think the issue for this, the issue really is that we are not yet at a place where we have faith in the Electoral Commission and the electoral system itself. And I think, one of the things that we should be looking at is not just simply the servers, but necessarily the conduct of the elections. Whereas it was fairly non-violent compared to 2017, it was also one of the most corrupt elections. There was no attempt to bring to law a campaign financing act, a framework that would essentially ensure that there is a more level playing field between the candidates. And I think that work still needs to take place. And of course, it may be the case that some of the parties are still looking back at 2020, but the more important conversation, 2022, the more important conversation is about what are the conditions under which the 2027 elections will take place. And that has to be constituting an electoral commission that we all have faith in, not just the big political parties, but voters. The biggest exit that we've recorded in the history of the country took place when neither did young people register to vote, and so many people, 7 million people, just didn't come out and vote. So I think the concern really, if I was and I'm sitting between the two senators and the two big political parties. So it is also a bit dangerous, because if I was to position them as elephants, I would definitely be the grass. But the point, I think, for the two political parties is for them to figure out how do they create an electoral system that actually has the confidence of the voter, not just the political parties and their candidates. And
on one major instance, to my question, one major instance is the declaration of the results at the polling station, which is final. Whatever comes to the National Tallying Center, the Bomas of Kenya, is just an ascertainment of what has been announced at the tallying center, at the polling station, by the returning officer who comes and ascertains that, and then he leaves the podium. Isn't that an important part of this entire electoral conversation that political parties, including the United Democratic Alliance Party, the ODM Party, their respective alliance and coalition, by extension, need to understand and appreciate in the essence of delivering free and fair elections?
I mean, yes, but it's the whole cycle, right? It's also civic education. Why was there no civic education in the last elections? Why was the Electoral Commission scrambling for resources right up until the last moment? So I think we have to look at the whole cycle of the electoral cycle. It's not just that one moment when we are moving between the voting and the announcement of the elections. It's the whole cycle. And the danger we've got is that we are preoccupying with a small section of the cycle and not the entire process.